Hello, all you drama enthusiasts. Welcome to the meeting. This is Angie's Drama Room, and I am your meeting host, Angie. And today we are going to be talking about a Korean romantic drama, and it's called Our Unwritten Soul. It's finished airing. It was a only, I believe, 12. It was 12 episode drama. It was aired on Netflix. And I actually really did enjoy it. I came in late on it, and I thought I may not like it because it just didn't seem like it was going to catch me. But I I was surprised for what the plot was, and it was very well written, very well directed. The acting was on superb. They took their time with it. This is not what we will call your normal idol drama. I really did enjoy watching this series. It tackled a lot of things. It tackled loneliness, seclusion, depression. They had disability, remarriage. They talked about the elderly and how their life are after when you are older. And I kind of just fell into it. It was also about romance. I would say technically there was maybe 40% of it was romance, right? But the other 60% was everything. I was everything about the melodrama itself. But however, they did a great job in incorporating the both together. Um, it starred our female lead here, Park Bo Young. The only thing I remember her only in, of course, was Strong Woman Dong Song or something like that. She was cute and perky in that one. And so yes, this one she was in this one. And then the male lead here was Jin Young. He is a K-pop artist from Got7. Yeah, I didn't realize he's very handsome himself. It kind of he reminds me of the Seong Kanju. If they put them two together, being like the older brother and younger brother, that show would have been hot. Somehow they need to put these two together as brothers. Somewhere down the line, they need to find a nice script to put these two together because when I saw Jin Young, I'm like, my goodness, he reminds me of Seo Kanju. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what the story is about. So the plot of the story was we have identical twin sisters. Well, not two identical twin sisters, but we had identical twin sisters. And when they used to grow up, when they were younger in elementary school, they used to swap places. If one sister didn't like something and the other sister did, or if one sister was better than something else, they used to swap places when they were in elementary school up until then. And so the mom found out about it. So what she ended up doing, in order to recognize which sister was which, she cut one of the sisters' hair. But the mom had a hard time identifying which sister was which daughter was which. The mom had a hard time identifying. The dad, however, can identify who was which daughter. And but then what happened is, I think towards the almost end of their elementary school or in beginning of the high school, I can't remember exactly, the father passed away. So then the mom had to take on the whole role of being, there's another thing, single mother, had to take on the role of raising her children. When they were older now, they did switch places where one of the sisters was having a hard time in Seoul on her job. And she just wanted to find a way where she can not necessarily end her life. However, find a way where she could not go to work for a long period of time. The other one of the I think it was Mi-Ji. It was Mi-Ji. Her name was the one that was left in to stay with her mother. Found out about it, went to Seoul, and so she stopped her from doing this. And so then that's when they came up with a plan to switch places. She said, "I'll take your place, and you go back home." And you shouldn't have to deal with what was going on at work, and that this is coming to this point. So she agreed to doing it. One thing about when you're doing swapping like this, there should have been some form of understanding or some form of revenging your sister or something that will help achieve a better lifestyle for that person you're swapping places. This one, it kind of didn't really. She had to learn what her sister was going through, and the other sister had to learn what the other sister was going through. Mi-Rae, who was the sister in Seoul, she told her just to stay in the background because that's kind of what happened. She told her just to stay in the background, do not expose yourself no more. But that sister couldn't do it. She just couldn't sit still. She was a more of the one that was more active, more outgoing. So she couldn't just sit still. So she ended up doing a job where everybody was surprised by it because what the job entitled her to be who was the main person of the job. But then when she agreed to do a certain task, it wasn't something that would require her to know what the job was. She just had to get somebody to she had to have this person agree to sign papers over in order to sell her business. That's kind of where it was. And then with the other the jobs that she was doing in with her mother, while she was living in same with her mother, Mi-Ji, she was doing odd jobs because she never had a steady job. So she was doing odd jobs because she didn't never went to school. That was a weird one right there. If I'm going to digress a little bit here, that was the only part of the plot I wasn't quite sure of. She spent 3 years in seclusion, where if your first it was a rumor that started and she was hiding herself. Once stuff like that happens, it does cause a psychosis where now she found herself in seclusion and loneliness, and she was a fear to leave her house, or no, not necessarily the house, just fear to leave her room. She barely could leave her room, and then the fear to leave the house. And so that's kind of where the seclusion came in at. And she spent 3 years under that seclusion. So I'm not quite sure what happened from was this the beginning of her high school year? Because what happened was the teacher, her teacher told her that if she doesn't go back to school, they're going to have to suspend her or something like that. She was not going to graduate. I don't know, something like that. So her sister swapped places with her. I mean that's kind of where I kind of was drawing the line here. I'm like they didn't really explain how the sister could switch places and she still was able to graduate or do what she needed to do. Or I mean, then she ended up getting suspended and taking her sister's place. But that's kind of what happened. And people were trying to get her. So Mi-Ji was the one who was locked in her room, and they were trying to get her out of the room. But anyway, that's kind of where I was kind of confused on the plot line. So that's the reason why she never had any steady jobs because she never really graduated. She never really graduated high school technically, or never had went to college. So she was doing a lot of odd jobs, and she took care of her elderly grandmother. The grandmother had a stroke, and that's kind of how she got out of that room and into trying to find help because she ended up even then she ended up pulling. This is back in, of course, during the time people had landlines, and so she ended up cutting the wire on the landline. So when her grandmother had a stroke, she couldn't get help in time, and she was fearful to leave the house. So she had to really try to get out there and try to get help for her grandmother. So that's kind of how she ended up leaving. And the grandmother called for her and told her, so she was able to leave the house again to go to the hospital. And the grandmother told her it was not your fault. So that way she got a little bit more courage to leave the house. So in the meantime, when she was so that's reason because she was in high school, because I'm assuming this was high school she was in. That's the reason why, because she was. This is how she met our male lead, um, uh, Jin Young, because he was her. His father passed away in a car accident. He was in the car accident with his father. He ended up getting burned on one side of his body, his arms and his legs, and he had lost his sensory hearing, partial sensory hearing in his ears. He still can hear, however, on times on high pitched noises or he gets hit in the ear, it stings so hard and so bad that it causes him to almost be deaf, but he didn't want to wear his hearing aid either. So he was trying to manage it on his own without any help. So that's what his disability was. So that's the reason why he was still. So I'm trying to figure out, was this high school? So I'm assuming this was the first year of high school, and rumor had it where that's when they kind of had this rumor about, and I'm not quite sure. Again, I can't remember exactly about it, but then that's kind of how she got into the psychosis. So I guess it could have been the first year of high school, and then 3 years they graduated. So I guess that could have been it. But Jin Young, he knew who each sister was. He could identify the sisters. So even when he was in adult life, when they swapped places in adult life, he had an inkling that this had to be her. But again, they said it was, so he kind of just went with it. So then Mi-Ji ended up switching places with Mi-Rae. So I think the story was more wrapped around Mi-Ji than the other sister. She ended up getting a job. Again, she was doing Mi-Ji herself, was getting odd jobs. So when Mi-Rae took her place, there was a job at a strawberry farm, and it was taken over by a startupper who got his wealth through startups. And so he took it over because his grandfather owned it. So his grandfather passed away and left him the farm. That's kind of interesting. But anyway, the strawberry farm. So he was hiring somebody to work there for 200,000 wons a day. So that was some good money right there. And so Mi-Rae, so she was able to get the job, and Mi-Rae took over that job as Mi-Ji. Mi-Rae's job experience was able to help the strawberry farm, but however, Mi-Ji, who had no job experience at all, she was just there because of her personality. She was able to help people and understand people in order to get them to understand, to help encourage them to be able to do stuff. So that was her superpower, I guess you would say. So in the meantime, all this was going on. The mom didn't know they switched places. The grandmother, however, when she was in a nursing care, the grandmother automatically knew that wasn't her. And so that was also the thing. But the grandmother never mentioned it. Grandmother had a stroke, so she had to go into nursing care because she wasn't able to walk. Then we have Jin Young, who was a lawyer. And so he worked at a law firm who his boss had a disability. He was in a chair. I think he could still stand and walk. However, he couldn't. He still used the wheelchair for mobility purposes. I guess his legs gets tired too. Burns on his arm and his legs. His mobility was also limited. And when he was in high school, he had accomplished a goal. He wanted to accomplish a goal in order to walk up a mountain top. And so that's how Mi-Ji and them got together. And that's how he started to like Mi-Ji when they were in high school, when he accomplished that goal. And she stood there and waited for him. And even he tried to cover up his burns, and she was there for him when he finally took off it was so hot. So he took off his shirt, his jacket, and in order to he exposed his burns. So that's how the romance started too in high school. And then so he went over to Seoul, became a lawyer, and then they barely didn't contact much with Mi-Rae, and Mi-Rae nearly had really not much contact with her family back home until this incident happened. Again, I talk about a lot what's going on, and I talk about a lot, and it did tackle a lot of this stuff that was going on in this storyline, but it was very, very well written. The chemistry, the romantic side again was about maybe 40%, but the coming together between Park Bo Young and Jin Young was it was a very they were a great match together, and you kind of rooted for them to get together because of his issues and because of her issues. And it was things that actually developed later. But again, I'm not going to go too much more into the storyline. I just wanted to give you a brief touch points on it, where I found each story arc was actually very, very well written, very well good. Jin Young's father passed away. He remarried another woman, and they probably were only gathered together for not even I don't even think it was a full year. and he wanted to keep his dad to himself. And that's kind of how the accident happened, and he kind of felt guilty because of that. And because now she ended up having to take care of him, but she was willing to do it, and her own family shunned her because they felt like she shouldn't have to be taking care of a teenage boy now that you don't no longer have the husband, and that's not even your son. And so her own family said, if you're going to do it, then don't bother coming home. And even then, her mother got ill, and a neighbor called her and told her, I know you may be going through a lot with your family, but you should still be with your parents, with your mother at this time. So she tries to go home to her mother, and her family didn't want, her family told her, no, you can't be here. They told her, you can't be here, and they told her to go back home. And so she couldn't even mourn her own mother at the time. Her stepson is the only son she has, her only family that she has. And so the stepson thought, he thought he was a burden to her, and then they finally got together at the end of the story to find connection and love between the two. They did an excellent job incorporating everything together, each person's arc, each sister's arc, as they switch places. Even had the others supporting lead, who owned the strawberry farm, how he ended up liking Mi-Rae, who he ended up finding out that she was Mi-Ji, but anyway, that it wasn't Mi-Ji. And then he basically gave the farm to her to manage together. So that was another romantic story. Their romantic storyline was very from the beginning of the time met at the farm, as opposed to with Mi-Ji and Park and Jin Young's storyline started when they were in high school itself. So that's the reason I always said to think this was more of Mi-Ji's point of view at this point of time. One of the things on the last episode, episode 12, it was just a wrap up. There was nothing going on in episode 12. They just wrapped up all the loose ends of the series, and it was just kind of going through the motions of the last episode, just to push it to the 12th episode. They could have probably wrapped it up in the 11th episode, but however, they said it was the highest ranking episode. And again, it was just a wrap up. You had to have a lot of stories from episode 1 through 11, because 12 really didn't state much of anything else except for tying up the loose ends. But I think because of the male lead in here, I think a lot of people who like GOT7, the GOT7 fans, probably was staying tuned to watch him in this one because, again, he was excellent. He still had that boyish look, though, however, but he was still excellent in this show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing to my channel. I appreciate all the subscriptions I have gotten lately. If you have not already, please hit that subscription button. And then that way you can always continue to watch my reviews. And I try to give you the best review I can on any dramas that I have been watching lately. Thank you for watching. Meeting adjourned.